Thank you, Emory Counseling, especially Veronica, for purchasing 2, not 1, but 2 books of 10 tips on how to survive your parents' divorce. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This episode is sponsored today by the book 10 Tips on How to Survive Your Parents' Divorce. This book was written by kids. It's for kids. It's a coloring book. When you have a tragedy of divorce and you have young children who do not know how to express themselves, this coloring book, 10 Tips on How to Survive Your Parents' Divorce, is the coloring book for them. Pick it up today at blendingthefamily.com or even on Amazon. 10 Tips on How to Survive Your Parents' Divorce. Again, written by kids, for kids. As Terry Crews would say, your success is my success. And a lot of you have been writing in saying, what does that mean? Well, it means essentially that if you're successful, it means I'm successful at the same time. So, in other words, figure out yourself. Enjoy this podcast.
Welcome to Blending the Family, the podcast. Topics can range from dads hitting rock bottom, daughters watching their parents divorce, or even what's a good wine for couples to have while talking about finances. Here's your host, whose bleeding ulcer bleeds Chicago Cub Blue, Tommy Maloney. Holy cow.
Welcome to a fun edition of Blending the Family, the podcast. I'm your host, Tommy Maloney. And if you can hear, my good buddy Duke is with me. We're actually doing this in the on the back deck, back porch. We don't have a deck, we have a porch. And wow, a couple things I wanted to talk about, and I think the first thing I want to talk about is you cannot control other people, okay? Especially in the world when it comes to divorce, and you're not, you don't agree with your former spouse as far as raising your kids or bedtimes or curfews as well. And there are times where, as much as you want to control them, say, no, this is how it is and this is how it's going to be. And especially if you don't have the co-parenting cooperation between the two of you. If you, the two of you are still in those anger stages where you cannot communicate. And now, I'll be the first one to admit that I'm not an angry former spouse, but the way my former wife and I communicate is strictly through email, and it's not easy having one-on-one conversations in person, face to face. So this is how we do it. And the example I want to give you is this past weekend. I had a little bit of a I'll admit it, I had a little bit of a meltdown. Not to go into great details, have some stress going on in life right now, but I will get through it. And a little bit of that came out. And what was going on was my son Connor takes a pill for, and I'll screw it up, ADD or AHDD, I don't know, anyway. And the backstory in that was my former wife felt that he needed to be tested, he needed to take medication, he needed it's really hard to, well, it's not really hard to describe, it's just and I wasn't a fan of it. I just saw when she would talk about how he's not focused in school, I just saw, like a lot of our kids, they're going through stages, they're growing, and in Connor's situation, he was going from 8th grade to freshman in high school, and my thought was that's part of it, is a little bit of lack of focus was just going through the teenage years, going through life stages, I guess. I don't know. So I didn't win that battle. I didn't win that argument. As much as the receiving the documents and filling out the questionnaires about Connor. Again, not being a fan of, I'm one of those people where even if I have a headache, I don't like taking aspirin. I mean, those rare occasions where, like you might get from time to time a migraine, and those are the very few times I'll take aspirin. And so this is, my own belief is that our body will heal itself. And when it came to taking, the whole medication in Connor's case, again, I just put my foot down and said, no, I don't want him doing that. And of course, you have to do what's best for your kids. And the battle was where I really had to sit down and talk with my wife Ann, and had to have a realization that it's not about me, it's not about my ex-wife, it's about our son Connor. So he didn't take his pill one day this past weekend, and I loved it because he's a different kid. He's a different teenager. His real personality gets to come out. And one of the things I noticed this past hockey season was, and it wasn't until probably this past weekend where I had the realization that during the hockey season he was very serious and focused. But at the same time, I didn't see a lot of what I saw the day, again, this past weekend when he didn't take his pill. And I got to see the humor, and I got to see his goofiness and his just, what do you call it? What am I trying to say? I guess just, it was my son. To put it bluntly, that's who I got to see, not a young man who has to have, medication for something that I firmly believe, and I'm not a doctor, I've never played a doctor on TV or radio or in a podcast situation, but I firmly believe that there has to be ways of going around needing to take medication. And again, that's my belief. This is my thought process, and I'm sure yours is different. But like I said, I got to see my son for, part of that day of a young man, again, who was not on his meds, and it was a lot of fun. And, as I started this, I just broke down later that night, because it was one of those situations where he and I had a really good weekend together. Played some wiffle ball. I mean, that's one of our things that he and I will do together, is we play wiffle ball in the front yard. My apologies to our neighbor, who every once in a while we hit a foul ball, and hits their house, or we hit a foul ball and hits our house, and I'm sure Ann is sitting in the house going, "Oh, those boys. But it was just a good weekend where he and I spent a lot of time together, and I love it, and I love those opportunities. And it's rough in the summertime. I don't know about your situation, how often you have your kids, if it's every other weekend, every other week, summers, holidays. So for me, it's every other weekend. And, you know, if I had, and this is where, this is a lot of it is my own fault of not having a sustainable business where a bit of the stress is right now, and having to look for, alternative means of income. So I want the ability to have Connor here more often, not just every other weekend, but every other week. So, again, that was my little meltdown of feeling a bit sorry for myself, feeling a bit not being a good man, not being a good father, a husband, and just, again, a bit of that stress came out, and just let the waterworks come out. So that's that. And love to know your thoughts. I mean, if your kids are in that group of needing to take medication for, the ADHD type thing, I would love to know your thoughts about that and your feeling. And, I mean, has it benefited your kids? Or has the reverse happened where it really didn't help? Again, just love to know your thoughts on that. And like I said, broadcasting from the back, it's just a gorgeous day, and I'm looking at a couple of projects I gotta do. But it's just so nice. So nice. And I know you're probably thinking, but Tommy, it's a new episode. No guest this week. Just wasn't feeling it this week. Just wasn't feeling the energy to reach out to have a guest, and a couple things will be changing possibly here soon. Don't want to say anything that might or might not happen right now. So stay tuned on that. I need a nap. I just did my, and this is why I think if you know somebody, if you have a connection with one of the co-founders of Headspace, like Andy. That's all I know is Andy. I can't pronounce his last name. I know it begins with a P, and he's a former monk. But before I hit record, I was doing my meditation, and my mind just, ironically, my mind couldn't focus. I kept trying to focus on my breathing. I kept trying to focus on, the technique of noting and realizing, okay, my monkey mind is wandering. I need to bring it back. And I don't know what's going on. I know what's going on. It's, like I said, a little bit of stress. But that's why I'm here in the backyard, just relaxing. And I have no right to be relaxing. I should be doing something, and I don't know. Just don't know. Again, like I always say, like I always do, I have thoughts in my mind. I guess briefly talk launching the crowdfund campaign on June 11th. It's official. So when you hear this podcast in the month of June, just be aware, June 11th. And check out my Facebook pages, even at here at Blending the Families. I will put that information on there about the third book, My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m. And a couple of things recently when I had my good friend Scotty Clark on the show, and Jason Kreidman. I'm sure I screwed up his last name again. And they both talked about me interviewing my dad. So, Dad, be forewarned. There could be a possibility in the month of June where you will be on this podcast. You have been forewarned, Dad. Daddy-o. I was going somewhere. Oh, June 11th. All right, so the name of the book, if you're not familiar with, is called My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m. Loosely based off my TEDx talk, and based off some advice that my dad gave me about being a dad myself and raising a young lad. And so, like I said, I'm doing the crowdfund for the book. And what does that mean? So what it means for me to crowdfund this book is that the website that I'll be using, if we reach our goal, and personally my goal is anywhere between $6,000 and $7,000, and a lot of that money is going to go to having a professional editor, and then comes other aspects of it, producing the book, and there are things I want to do with the book. Obviously, create an ebook out of it. I want to create an audio book out of it. I only see myself reading the book. I don't see anyone else. This is my life, and that's part of possibly where the money is going to go. And if we reach our campaign goal, then there's the next step, and that is that publishers can see that there's interest in this book. And if that's the case, then they can help me with the process of getting the book out to the masses. So that's where we're at, and I'm super excited. I mean, this has been 2 years, and this shouldn't have been 2 years. This should have been a year. I should have had this book published at least a year ago. So once this book is completed and done, I can erase my giant whiteboard and start my next book, which I'll give you a thought. I think my next book is going to be about being a stay-at-home dad. I've already talked to other stay-at-home dads, not to pick on not focus on stay-at-home moms, but it's a different world being a stay-at-home dad. And one of the things I learned, matter of fact, I had a coaching session with a gentleman who's his job was eliminated, but the good thing is his wife is able to support him and their two kids, their two toddlers, I think they were babies. What this gentleman Tim was talking about, but we talked about we were essentially comparing notes of being stay-at-home dads, and this is his first time at this. And I told him that the problem I had was when Connor was at the age where we decided to say, all right, it's time to start weaning him off of me, and so I could go back to a full-time job, even though at that time I think I was still working at the ice rink. Yeah, I was working part-time at one of the local ice rinks it's actually and if you know me, you know that I'm not a Colorado Avalanche fan, but the ice rink, actually I worked at a couple ice rinks, but one of them I spent a lot of time with was actually the Avs practice facility. And so I would get done with work at anywhere between midnight and 1 o'clock and go home, and I'd be on baby duty, and my former wife would get up the next morning and go to work, and I'd be on baby duty, and it was a lot of fun. But what I was explaining to this gentleman, Tim, that I was coaching, was that one of the hardest things for me was to get back into the workforce when, even though I was working, to get back into the full-time job, back into my field, which was training, I got a lot of not just strange looks, but strange conversations when I would talk to recruiters and people within a company of HR. And they would say to me, "You were doing what?" I said, "Yeah, I was a stay-at-home dad." And you would hear the silence on the phone going, "Okay, well, is this reverse discrimination? I don't know." And maybe it was, but it's just interesting. There were times where I would go to Gymboree, and I'd be maybe the only dad, or maybe there'd be another dad, and of course we would be by each other and just do what the dad, we'd high five each other and go, "Yeah, hey, all right, cool." I'd go to one of the malls, and I'd put Connor in the stroller and just walk around, and I really didn't get a sense that I was an oddball there, but it did feel that, oh my gosh, there's a dad, a man pushing a baby around. What's up with him? Why is he so weird? So yeah, I think that's going to be the next book of tales from the world of being a stay-at-home dad. So excited about that. And so we'll see. So again, June 11th, we will be launching the campaign for the book, My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m., and hopefully we will reach the goal and get this thing finally published. Don't know when it will be published, but hopefully by this year. So that's really about it. Don't have a guest, so really don't have much to really say other than that's about it. There you go. Okay. So love to hear your thoughts about medication for kids. If you have any stories, you want send me stories about you being a stay-at-home dad. That'd be great as well. And there you go. June 11th. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for downloading, sharing, carrying this podcast. And however you get this podcast, please leave a rating and review on however you get your podcast. Please go to the website, blendingfamily.com. Monthly newsletter is out. So if you haven't received yours, you probably didn't sign up. So go to blendingfamily.com, sign up for the newsletter, and you'll get not only insights to what's going on as far as any promotions or products, but we'll talk about spotlighting guests on the podcast and maybe some special VIP stuff as well. So please go to blendingfamily.com, sign up for the newsletter, leave ratings and reviews for the podcast, because come on, you get this for free essentially. It costs me a little bit of money, but hey, you can help me, right? Please. All right. Thanks for listening to the podcast, other known as Blending the Family. I was your host, Tommy Maloney. Well, I'm still your host, but I'm saying bye.
Thank you for listening to Blending the Family, Don't worry, we know he's not funny. That's Tommy.
This episode is sponsored today by the book 10 Tips on How to Survive Your Parents' Divorce. This book was written by kids. It's for kids. It's a coloring book. When you have a tragedy of divorce and you have young children who do not know how to express themselves, this coloring book, 10 Tips on How to Survive Your Parents' Divorce, is the coloring book for them. Pick it up today at blendingthefamily.com or even on Amazon. 10 Tips on How to Survive Your Parents' Divorce. Again, written by kids for kids.